The arrival of artificial intelligence computer programs has opened up a whole new way of creating assets for N3V Games' Virtual Model Railroad computer program, Trainz. In particular, Meshy, a web-based AI-powered 3D modeling program designed to create 3D assets from text prompts or 2D images, provides a means to easily create human and animal characters that can be imported into Blender. Blender, a free open-source 3D computer graphics program, can then be used to animate the characters. Other computer programs, such as Meshy, Mixamo, and Cascadeur, can further facilitate the animation process. However, getting an animated character that can be imported into Trainz does present some challenges, which may be why few animated characters have appeared on N3V Games' online asset database, the download station. Some months ago, I decided to have a look at what it would take to create animated characters, in particular human characters for Trainz. This wasn't my first attempt. Back in 2017, I created a character I called Waldo and made several short animations featuring him, which can be viewed on my website. But I wasn't happy with him because in order to animate him, I segmented the body. And during animation, the body parts would separate. I figured there had to be a better way. My thought was to keep the character as one intact mesh and use Blender's weight painting to assign different parts of the body to individual bones. It turned out that this wasn't the biggest challenge in creating a character that could be imported into Trainz. The biggest challenge was learning how to establish a rest pose from which all the remaining poses could be derived. The rest pose, or default pose, is typically a T pose or an A pose. It serves as the base pose. All other poses in an animation are derived from the rest pose by moving one or more bones to offset parts of the mesh, then saving the offsets as keyframes. Turns out that when starting an animation that will be imported into Trainz, one has to set the rest pose as the pose on the first keyframe before creating more poses and keyframes in the animation. Failing to do this can, and usually does, result in some pretty weird animation. Setting the first pose in an animation as the rest pose makes importing animations into Trainz possible. But it also is a process that limits the extent to which I have been able to use programs such as Meshy, Mixamo, and Cascadeur to facilitate animation. More about this later. In the following series of tutorials, I will go through creating an animated character and importing it into Trainz. I will break out the workflow into several steps as follows. Creating an image to convert to a 3D mesh. This can involve finding a suitable image on the internet, creating one with the internet program Trainz AI, or creating one with Nana Banana Pro, which is part of Meshy. Create a 3D mesh in Meshy. I like to not only create the mesh, but also texture it. Reduce the poly count to about 10,000 and convert the mesh to a quad-based mesh. Correct the Meshy albedo texture. I like to use the texture created by Meshy rather than creating one later. This usually involves some tweaking. Adding an armature to the mesh. I will use an armature I created for my Waldo character. This mesh uses forward kinematics for the arms and inverse kinematics for the legs. Using inverse kinematics makes positioning the legs easier. Weight painting assigns the parts of the mesh that are influenced by scaling, rotating, and moving the bones of the armature. By adjusting the weight painting, unwanted distortions of the mesh can be reduced or removed. Setting the rest pose. For importing into Trainz, this is a critical step, which avoids weird animation results. Create a material and PBR texture set, albedo, normal, and parameter files. I will add generic normal and parameter files rather than use Meshy's PBR texture files. This is in part due to being lazy, but also due to the fact that for a while Meshy was not providing the normal file, although that has since been fixed. Create levels of detail. I prefer to use Blender's add-on LodMod, as it creates a mesh with less than 500 polys that still looks human. Create poses and keyframes to animate the mesh. This is the whole point of the workflow, although one doesn't get to it until step 9. And finally, importing the animated character into Trainz. I will import into Trainz 22 SP4, as anything beyond this version mucks up my high-definition route of the Canadian Pacific Railway's mountain subdivision. So let's get started.